Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, we have Sens ownership updates.
Whoa!
But the team hasn't sold, of course, but we do know that the lead bidder has pulled his $1 billion offer.
And we continue our NHL Draft Prospect Profiles with 3 players again today: Nate Danielson, Brayden, Yager, and Tom Willander.
A couple WHL beauties and a defenseman coming over to play college hockey from Europe. All of it's brought to you by the Game Time app. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 817 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Please like and subscribe wherever you download your podcast. We're also free and available on YouTube. Today is Friday, June 9th, and Pilsy, then there were 2 legitimate offers, 3 bids on the table, but the $1 billion is no more.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think, Ross, that the person that reportedly made the highest bid is now out. And if you're the NHL and the everyone attached to the Ottawa Senators sale here, you got to be taking a good hard look in the mirror and be like, okay, maybe it's time we stop screwing around here, as the person that was going to give us the most money has decided, to heck with this, I'm done with this. This is a waste of my time. So, I mean, how much longer till any of the other candidates still in the running decide, hey, I'm spending way too much concentration calories. That's the word I was looking for. I'm spending way too much concentration calories on this. This is deteriorating into a debacle right before our eyes. And I don't care what Gary Bettman says, this cannot be the way he anticipated this going. And there is no way he thinks that this is going well. No way.
Steve Apostolopoulos was the reported highest bidder. Bruce Garriock with the Ottawa Sun tweeting out today his article mentioning that Toronto billionaire Steve Apostolopoulos, who had a fully financed bid believed to be worth more than $1 billion, informed he'll no longer take part in the process. And that's the game of chicken that you play when you're trying to milk every single penny out of a deal. You risk alienating the bidders and then saying, nah, I'm good. This isn't worth my time. Steve Apostolopoulos is worth $3.9 billion. I don't think he's spending 24/7 dealing with this. It's kind of, I'm assuming, been a part of his everyday, but he's got other things going on. You make a decision here. We're going on almost a month, but that leaves Michael Andlauer, who's partnered with local investors in Ottawa to buy the Senators. There's the Kimmel Group, who recently added Jamie Salter, another Canadian billionaire, to theirs. And then the Nico Sparks Group, who's been eerily quiet over the last couple of weeks now as the sale drags into day 212?
I don't know. It's in the 200s, but
Windsor Sens guy. He's sending out a tweet every single day tagging us in it. It's 214 days.
Oh, nice. Thanks for the update, Windsor Sens guy. Appreciate that. But at this point, it just seems like the Nico Sparks Group is continuing to try to muddy the waters here and outlast everyone. And this is not a report from my sources. This is just an indication that I'm getting here, and all these other players are like, well, look, if the NHL and the Ottawa Senators are entertaining this, we don't want to be a part of this.
But reportedly, that's the second highest bid.
I'm not saying it's not a good bid. I'm not saying they don't have a chance to win or they're not in the running anymore. But all I'm saying is it seems like the key for the Nico Sparks Group is to outlast everyone. It doesn't seem like they have the best bid. They're still somewhat urgently trying to get investors to put in more money. They have stopped adding people to the group, which is interesting. They were really on a full court press for that. But I don't know. If I'm the Kimmels and the Andlauer groups, I'm saying, what are we doing here, as we just have to keep following along with what the Sparks group is doing?
And I know hockey ops is such a small part of this. Fans, I know you wish it was more. This is a real estate play.
Yes.
It's a long-term play. But looking right in front of you, the potentially highest paid player on your NHL roster, your highest paid employee, if you're the owner, is on the brink of moving. What's going to happen with Alex DeBrincat? And you'd think the owner, it's like you're going to buy a car. You don't want the cat to scratch the back seat before he flies out, right?
You
So
really don't. Yeah.
you want that new car smell when you go into the CTC for the first time and turn on the freezing cold water. You need that. So I'm curious with how that is playing in the frustration level in the owners, because if I'm putting myself in their shoes, which I can't afford, then I would be pretty upset that the on-ice product could be maybe lacking because there's no decision going forward.
Well, and just, Ross, the further these deadlines move along, the further the winning candidate and group can get in there and start doing things. And this is an Ottawa Senators team, not only on the ice, but off the ice, that there are major, major decisions and implications based on these decisions that will affect the success of this franchise, both on and off the ice in the future. So it's only a detriment to whoever ends up winning this, that this is taking so long, because, Ross, just because the winner will win the bid, it's not like they just get the keys and walk in. There's still a long process after that. And I don't know. I honestly, I never thought I'd say this, Ross, but I kind of feel sorry for all the billionaires involved in this bid, because I never thought I'd say it feels sorry for billionaires. But at this point, they got to be like, okay, we've put so much time, effort, money, stress, concentration, calories into this, but where's our line? And apparently that line is being crossed for some people, and they're saying, no, we're out. Like, maybe Ryan Reynolds and the Remington group are like, thank God we didn't stick around for this.
It's been a long, drawn-out process. We've covered it every step of the way. So's Bruce Garriock. And shout out Ian Mendes, who's somewhere in France, Italy. I know he went over to Europe, and the wife let him bring over his laptop in case he needed to fire out a quick story. So maybe the hockey gods are waiting for Ian Mendes to get back on the beat before announcing that. I'd say it's more so Gary Bettman wanting to make sure this doesn't overshadow his Stanley Cup final. Maybe we'll touch on the Cup final at the end of the show, but we do have some prospects to get into. The ranking continues. It's been so much fun. The feedback's been great. And we're also, programming note, head over to YouTube on Saturdays and Sundays for the month of June for 4 bonus draft profiles, individual draft profiles of players that landed outside of our top 50, but who we're handpicking, saying, please, Ottawa, just pick one of these guys. Please, could you? So head over to the YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get this weekend. We're doing 2 prospects with Sens connections in a way.
Yep.
An Ottawa 67s player and the brother of a current Sens prospect. And the other day, we're doing a goalie-friendly show of the champions of the Clark Cup in the USHL. Why? Because the other prospect we're doing is a defenseman going to North Dakota. So you know we've got interest in that, Pillsy. We'll look forward to that. But we've got 3 more exciting prospects to round up today.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, the weekend bonus episode prospects are more, that's us trying desperately to cover players we think the Senators might draft, because we have not hit on very many of those. And
I'm going to find out our record. I want to go back and see, and that's including top 5 picks, which if we did 90 profiles in 2020 and missed on 3 and 5, that would have been tough.
Yeah, I don't know who gets the egg on their face there, us or the Sens. I'm not sure. But and also, Ross, some of these players we picked are just vibes, just good vibes that we like and we want to talk about, and they seem like they'd be good additions to the franchise.
Heck yeah. So we'll get into that on the weekend, but 3 exciting prospects coming up. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Bird Dogs. Guys, summer is here, and if you want shorts that fit really nicely, that are comfortable and versatile, there's only one way to go. Oh, Ross is our model here. Don't fall off that chair, buddy. Look at those Bird Dog shorts in action. So comfy, so versatile. Look, you can jump up and down on office chairs with ease. That's what you want to hear from a shorts company. And you can wear them on the golf course. You can wear them going out for drinks with friends, out to dinner. You can wear them to go yell at your dog, which is what Ross is going to do, or if you're going to go walk your dog. There's so many different ways you can use your bird dogs. They have shorts, pants, and they also got polos now. So you're covered from top to bottom with bird dogs, and they are my favorite summer shorts. I mentioned I've tried other short brands. I've paid top dollar for other short brands, and they do not compare to bird dogs. I mean that. So get yourself a pair or more of bird dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNHL, they're going to throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler. You guys saw me drinking out of that yesterday with every order. So go to birddogs.com/lockedonnhl, promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti style tumbler from Bird Dogs.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farm to Fork Delivery. Farm to Fork Delivery is serving premium seafood and meats locally. No hormones, nothing. All they do is make sure that they bring you the freshest products all over Ontario and Quebec. So make sure you go over to farmtoforkdelivery.ca. And when you do, use our promo code SENS10. You'll get 10% off your first order. The worst thing is when you're about to make a great meal and you're like, oh, I have to go to the grocery store because I don't have meat and, it doesn't last long and you have to use it right away. No, make your grocery store stops just for the sides. And then you know that you have Farm to Fork available for you. Pillsy, you got them. Vacuum seal. How easy is it to pull just one dinner at a time?
Oh, it's the best. And especially, sometimes my girlfriend and I are on opposite schedules. So I don't want to pull out a 4-pack of chicken breasts when I only want one of them. I only want one. I got one. I want 2, 3, or 4. I got them. Ross, we made a amazing chicken bacon gnocchi dish.
Ooh,
the
nice.
gnocchi is clutch. And the chicken was from Farm to Fork, and it was delicious.
So everyone can head to farmtofork.ca to taste the Farm to Fork difference. Use promo code SENS10, 10% off. Farm to Fork. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, Pillsy, where can people go if they want to hear more about Alex DeBrincat not signing long-term in Ottawa?
I mean, they can catch multiple episodes from us this week, Ross. We talked about Alex DeBrincat, so go to YouTube if you want to watch us. Listen on any of your favorite audio platforms like Apple Music, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. And we are on the beat of Alex DeBrincat, but we are not flooding your Twitter timeline with ridiculous mock trades.
We took our stab doing that for Erik Karlsson and then had to delete prospects almost every piece that came back.
Pretty much, I think the only guy we knew was Dylan DeMello.
Yeah. Chris Tierney, 40-point season. So anyways, it will happen if it does. And I think it was Brennan who tweeted out on Twitter that could this be our Hossa for Heatley trade? Oh, I don't know. Time will tell, but go check that out over at Locked On Senators because right now it's all NHL draft all the time. Coming in at number 15 on our 2023 Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, he's a man who took the captaincy from Ridley Gregg after he graduated in Brandon. It's Nate Danielson.
Yes, Nate Danielson, the new captain of the Brandon Wheat Kings. He's a centerman from Red Deer, Alberta. In 68 games, he had 33 goals and 45 assists. And tough time to take over a team as captain, Ross, when they missed the playoffs. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of support for Nate Danielson on that team, but that didn't stop him from having a pretty good season.
Oh, didn't stop him at all. And when you look at that, it's like, how are you going to put your team on the back as a captain, as a guy who had over a point per game last year, and now he doesn't have the ability. And I know Ridley missed a lot of time last year, whether it was World Juniors or he dealt with an injury at some point. So there weren't times where he was stuck behind him, but he was playing center as a first-line role this year and just a great skater. First thing you notice about him when you put on his highlight tape is he's a big body, but can skate so well. He led the team in scoring by 8 points, Pillsy. And after the guy who went second, if you take out the guy who went second, which I didn't, I said 8 points, so I'm not cherry picking completely, but above the second guy, 28 more points. So you can tell that he led this team in the box score, but also in terms of the emotional leader of this team as well. When you look at the stats he pulled up, 33 goals, 45 assists, and the rankings, a little bit all over the place, Bills. If you go Olympic style, where you take out the lowest and highest score, it really crunches the numbers here. But Corey Pronman has him at 7, while Elite Prospects is all the way down at 16.
Yeah, so again, Corey Pronman, his rankings are very interesting because, well, we'll get to this, but there's been players that we've scoffed at how low he has, and unfortunately, and we'll dive deeper into the details, I would say he is very high on Nate Danielson here, as he has him at 7, whereas Craig Button at 17, Scott Wheeler at 20, Rachel Dory did not rank him, but she only did a top 10 so far. Chris Peters at 13, and then Elite Prospects all the way down at 26. So you have a range of 7 from Pronman and Elite Prospects 26. That gives him an average rank of 16.6.
What really stood out to me was Elite Prospects in their write-up in their draft guide. I really appreciated how they acknowledge, like, look, the industry is really high on this guy because he's a safe pick. He's a guy who you can easily see the tools to be an NHL forward. And it's just, is he going to peak as a bottom 6 who can do a bit of everything? Or is he going to really accelerate once he's given a specified role in the organization that he's going into? There's no doubt he's going to be back in Brandon, hopefully leading a Wheat Kings resurgence a little bit, getting them back into the picture of being a competitive team like they historically have. But I just think the tools are going to attract the team to probably take him in a range where I think the initial reaction on Twitter is going to be kind of like, oh, I can't believe this guy was passed over. I can't believe that guy. And a lot of that has to do with the strength of this class versus an indictment on Nate Danielson. I think he'd be a 10 to 15 pick last year in the draft with no questions asked. Whereas this year, it's like, oh man, there's some really intriguing prospects. So I understand why the industry's higher on him though, right, Billsy? Like, you watch him play, you can see how it would translate to the next level.
Yeah, it can. The thing I noticed, Ross, is he more often than not chooses to go right at defenders with the puck, but then he can calmly deke through them. Like, you rarely see him try to have space and keep the defender away from him. Like, if a defender has his gap set up, Danielson is like, okay, now I know where you're set up. I can either weave right through you, or like you mentioned, he's a very good skater. I'll just simply go right around you. But whereas that looks great and is it effective in junior, Ross, I'm worried he's going to get too comfortable doing that and he's going to rely on that. And then when you get to the NHL and you got guys that have better gap control, longer reach, faster skaters, his go-to move isn't going to work every time. And then he's going to just continually get shut down over and over again. Now, I'm not saying that will happen. I'm just saying that's a concern because maybe as he gets older and more experience, he's going to be able to do that with more ease and be able to get around those better defenders. But that was one thing I noticed. Almost every highlight he was doing that, and it looks great in junior, but can it translate to the pros?
It's worth noting that this right shot centerman, who I could kind of see being a winger at the next level, is one of the oldest players in the draft. The draft starts at September 15th every year, and he's born on September 27th. So he's just 2 weeks from being eligible for last year's draft. And I think that could put him down a few teams' lists because you see it and you're like, oh, is there as much development as a guy who's maybe born in June or July, that sort of thing. So I do understand that. I do see him as a guy where a team who has a culture and maybe even has a young and up and coming team and is looking to more fill roles than try to hit a home run on talent and a guy who could score 40. They're going to jump up and take this guy. And the elite prospect shades of Philip Hedl, maybe at the same age. I can't really speak too much about how Philip Hedl was as a junior level player, but when I see Philip Hedl play now, I think there's a little bit more playmaking ability than there is in Nate Danielson's game. But maybe that's something he can add. So, Pilsy, why don't you give your piece and say what the scouts are saying about Nate Danielson?
Yep. So Corey Pronman, who was, if you remember, the highest on him at 7, says Danielson is a well-rounded center who has a lot of NHL traits. He's a big body who skates and competes well, which, when combined with his offensive touch, allows him to be effective in a lot of situations.
And elite prospects, who we said is a lot lower at 26. Perhaps no player in this year's draft exemplifies the divergence of opinions between the team side and the public sphere than Danielson. So most of their group rates him as a late 5th round, but many on the team side see him as a lock for the top 15. So that's where the intrigue just becomes even bigger with Nate Danielson. Pilsy, is he an X factor in this draft of how the rest of it will fall?
Yeah, possibly. I think there's going to be a couple teams, like you mentioned, that latch onto him, and then a couple teams that just aren't really interested. They're going for a different type prospect. I think he gets drafted closer to 20th here. I think he projects to be a good third line center that can play up and down the lineup, because in Brayden, he's the top guy, as mentioned, the captain. He was not only on the power play, he was also killing penalties. So he's getting good experience. Like, that's the one thing. If you're going to be on I don't want to say bad team, because when I looked at the WHL standings, Kelowna made the playoffs and they had less points than Brayden. They were just in the other conference, right? So it's one of those things. But when you're not on an amazing team, at least be trying things and work on your development and use that to a strength, which I think Danielson did. So I got Danielson at 3.5 stars for me. I don't know. I think he's going to be a good player, but I don't see a lot of upside here compared to guys in this area.
Right. And those teams drafting in that area, a lot of them just had changes at the top. So I don't even know where they're thinking in terms of Pittsburgh 14 with Kyle Dubas coming in. Nashville has Barry Trotz coming in. Calgary has Craig Conroy coming in.
Yeah, wow.
And that would be the kind of that area, that 14 to 16 range where anything can happen, where like, I think 13 at Buffalo, you'd be reaching to get him at that point, but anywhere from Detroit on at 17, I don't know if Winnipeg has kind of they always do have an affinity. It feels like the guys who play close to here, whether it's Minnesota, they have a ton of Minnesotans on the team. They've got some Winnipeggers and Manitoba natives as well. Like, could that be a landing spot for him? Who knows? But we'll find out soon. For more draft coverage, head over to Locked On Senators YouTube page. There you will find all of our draft profiles living and all episodes of the Locked On Senators podcast. All right, coming up next, 2 more profiles to do, including another WHL center and another defenseman. So there has been a run, 3 straight shows where we profiled a defenseman. This time, I don't know how I feel about this guy. You'll find out after the break. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. They were the presenting ad for this episode, and for a good reason, guys. Nowhere can you find a better spot to get last-minute tickets on any entertainment event other than Game Time. You like sports? You like music? You like comedy? You like theater? You want to go day of? No problem. Go to Game Time. That's the way you need to get your tickets, because it's fast. Just 2 taps, 1, 2, boom. Tickets are already on your phone. And Ross loves this about Game Time. You get your images of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. You're not sitting behind a pole or next to the bathrooms if you don't want that, or anything like that. So check out Game Time today. Use the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, Game Time, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
And this episode's also brought to you by Owl & Co. Grooming. It's a local company started by Chris Sinclair, a Sens Central citizen like yourselves, and he's also a huge Sens fan. We see him at all the events. We love hanging out with him, and this product just caught my attention right away, because sometimes you get into those grooming routines, your eyes are half closed in the morning, and you're like, all right, where's this bottle of this? Where's that bottle of that? There's that. Where is it? It's just too much. So this is a simplified way to have a great grooming routine. Go check out their starting lineup, owlandcogrooming.com. They've also got great merch. We've got ours. I wore mine on yesterday's show. Awesome merch. So go check it out. Rep local, support local, and get a grooming routine that's free from complications. They use all sorts of natural ingredients made in small batches. It's really just good for you, and the smell is unbelievable. It's the kind of smell where you've put it on and your girlfriend scooches closer to you on the couch. That's what they do at Owl & Co. So go check them out, owlandcogrooming.com. And because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, you can get our promo code Senators15, gets you 15% off your next order. That's 15% off using Senators15 at owlandcogrooming.com. All right, Pillsy. Final segment of the week. It's been another great, busy week here at Locked On Senators, from draft profiles to ownership news to seemingly a new twist in the Alex DeBrincat saga, dare I say. But right now we are focused on the draft. And coming in at number 16 from the Western Hockey League, it's Brayden Yager.
This kid is a sniper. Oh, man. The shot on this guy is absolutely lethal. And all you need to do is watch a couple highlights of this center from the Moose Jaw Warriors, and you can see it. I mean, he especially popped off in the playoffs, Ross, with 16 points in 10 playoff games. During the regular season, 67 games, 28 goals, and 50 assists, good for 78 points. He's the assistant captain of the Moose Jaw Warriors and was the 3rd overall pick in the WHL draft back in the day.
And that put a ton of expectations on him to be that same dominant player the moment he stepped into junior, and he lived up to it last year, playing super well as a 16-year-old, being able to score 34 goals and almost play at a point per game pace. Had a decent playoffs as well, 10 games, 7 points. But this year, at the start of the Ivan Hlinka, he looked great. He was flying around, right? Had 9 points in 5 games, wore an A for Team Canada, and scouts thought this is a surefire top 10 pick. He could challenge into the, 6, 7, 8 range. But then the season started, and it just felt like there wasn't that domination. It felt like he was, I don't want to say a passenger at times, but a guy who relied on his natural skill, that shooting ability, to do a lot of the work. Whereas scouts just kind of left there, and this is all just from reading, that they left sometimes like, I kind of wish Brayden Yager did just a little bit more today.
Yeah, and that's fair, Ross. As you mentioned, this is his 3rd season in the WHL. I mean, his first one was only 24 games, COVID stuff, so that's not really a full season. But in 4 more games this year, he scored 6 less goals, which for a guy who has a shot like this, and you're entering, like, usually that 3rd year of junior is when you really pop off, right? And to score less goals in more games, that's a bit concerning for me.
Yeah, it is. Now, does 16 points in the playoffs make up for it a little bit? Even though there are a couple, not to take away when you do this, because it is also impressive, but a few of those were 3-point games, where it's just like you have 2 3-point games and a 2-point game. That leaves a few where you weren't on the score sheet.
Yeah, and that's fair. And I think, Brayden Yager for me, Ross, is kind of a poor man's Colby Barlow. I think they have similar traits, but Colby Barlow, a little more aggressive and has some other skills just in his other than just his lethal shot. Now, that's not to say Yager is just a lethal shot and that's it. He did get 50 assists in 67 games, so he's able to kind of use that threat of a big shot to open up and make space for his teammates, which he does very well, obviously. But I don't know. If you're comparing the two, Barlow and Yager, I'm taking Barlow every day of the week, personally.
Definitely. At least the scouts almost seem like their consensus on this one, when you have the highest on our list at Chris Peters at 14, Scott Wheeler at 15, Corey Pronman at 16, the average at 17, Craig Button at 18, and then elite prospects at 22, right? You're almost looking at consecutive numbers all the way up through the middle to high teens. So I think that there's a pretty fair range that we're going to see him in. And I'm excited to see what he does next year, because I think that a big summer of training, he's the type of guy where even though this was maybe a half a step back in terms of the trajectory you want to see from a top 15 lottery type player, I do still think that there is a huge long road ahead and a high probability that with the tools he has, that he can be an elite prospect as soon as next year's World Juniors. We could see him challenging for a spot in that situation.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable. And the thing with when everybody's rankings are so close, Ross, that tells me that your one defining attribute, when it's all agreed upon like that, it's interesting, because then it's not like someone's overhyping it or someone is devaluing it. It's just like everybody kind of knows that this is your thing, and that's that, which I'm not saying is a good or a bad thing. It's just interesting where some of the other guys, their one defining attribute either skyrocketed them up rankings, or other people were like, well, he's kind of one-dimensional, right? So it's interesting to see how he's been ranked throughout our consensus here.
He's a very disciplined player as well. Only 14 penalties minutes this year. So that's only 7 minor penalties in 67 games and 1 minor penalty in 10 playoff games. So he's a guy that doesn't put you down and can play on special teams. I think you're going to see him kind of being in that role, at least at junior next year, really kind of taking the reins with that. And he needs to be the same type of leader that they needed out of Nate Danielson with the Brandon Wheat Kings, right? Like Yager Furcus is going to be moving on. He had 88 points, 10 more than Yager at tops on his team. And they've got some other guys graduating as well. So I think that it's going to be a really important season next for Brayden Yager rather. And it's how does he respond? So I'm excited to see his development. And if you're a team that you're watching this right after your team took him, like, that's a nice little swing. I think that there's a lot of upside here. It just, you have to get him in the right development system and allow him to gain his confidence playing with his strengths.
Yeah, I think too, the thing is, like, he's one of those guys with a lethal shot that doesn't put a lot of effort on defense. And that could come back to bite him as he gets to the pros. And Ross, this is a guy I anticipate as he gets to higher competition levels will be moved to the wing.
Yes, I think that going to the wing would be the smarter move. And it's just, the advanced stats probably don't love him that much.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
And you see that. So what type of team could go after him? I'm curious to see myself, because I think we could see him slip into the 20s a little bit, but not far from there. I think you're going to look from like 20 to 23 is probably where you'd look. So like a Minnesota, Columbus, who's already going to have picked at that point, or even the New York Rangers there. So it'll be interesting to see, but we know that he comes in at number 16 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings. All right. Coming in at number, I'm trying to do the side here for anyone watching on YouTube. I hit the wrong button twice.
A lot going on.
And with Restream, sometimes it used to take it away. So I'm going to show you full reset. Ready? Kumbaya. All right. Coming in at number 17 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, we're going to Rogla and talking about defenseman Tom Willander.
The third defenseman on our list, Ross. And it's funny, and we'll get into this, but I feel like Tom Willander is the perfect middle between the two defensemen we've talked about. He's not your elite, hard-nosed, big shutdown defender, but he, like David Reinbacher, and he's not your shifty, offensive Axel Sandin Palika. He's somewhere in the middle, which, again, I'm not saying is good or bad. That's just how I feel about him. Depending on what you're looking for in a defenseman as a prospect, as a team, that might really be something that you like is, hey, look, he's a two-way guy that we can use in multiple situations, and we don't need to really get that perfect yin and yang partner for him because he's kind of in the middle anyways.
Yes, he dominated at the J20 level with Sens prospect Oscar Pettersson. I'll tell you what Pettersson thinks about Willander later on in this. But first, his number one assets is skating. Most shutdown defensemen or those types of two-way defensemen, they have to rely on their skating. And that's his best attribute. He takes away plays in the neutral zone. He's really active with his stick. He's got a motor on him. The elite prospects had him in the top 5 for his motor in this draft. They also had him as the 5th best shutdown defenseman and 5th best neutral zone defender in this draft. So you're looking at a guy whose value stems from a combination of that skating and always being engaged defensively. One of the things, little tease, is that Oscar Pettersson told me he's a lot more physical than he might get credit for. So he's a guy, he was even saying in practice, he's a guy who could go and, not run you, but go hard into the boards always. And I think that that's the type of competitiveness that you need in these types of defensemen. And when you look at the body type for a guy like this, I think to play in the NHL, you're going to want him to gain 10, 15 pounds, 180 right now at 6'1". And like I said, the points are all there at the J20 level, 25 points, 39 games, dominant for his team. Might want to cut down on the PIMS a little bit, 22, but he also got tossed in the World Under 18. So the numbers kind of jump out at you. Against Canada, had 25 penalty minutes in, I believe it was the semifinals penalty. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but clearly the wires crossed for him, and right shot. So he's also a position of value. And before getting tossed from that last game, or second last game, because he ended up playing the next one, wasn't suspended, had 8 points in 7 games at the tournament.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it with Willander a little earlier, Ross, is the skating is everything revolves around how good of a skater he is. And when you're a defenseman that's a good skater, everything is just a little bit easier for you because you can break up plays before they even develop because you can get into spots where attacking forwards are trying to sneak by and you can just use your skating to be one step ahead of them. But also it helps you transition the puck up the ice, and he uses that great skating to go end to end with ease. Now, he's not like some of your other prospects where they're able to finish with that transition. He kind of relies on his teammates to go the rest of the way. He's like, I'll bring it here, but then you guys got to do something with it. And that's okay as long as he's got the right support from the right line mates. But what I like from him defensively is his first thought is, I'm going to take this guy wide. If a guy's attacking me, take him wide, take him wide, take him wide, and don't let him even think about going to that middle part of the ice. And I think as a young defenseman playing over in Sweden, that's a transitional skill that he's going to be able to bring to North America, especially they got the bigger ice surfaces there. So if he's able to keep them wide on the big surface, he should have an easier way to keep them wide on a small surface.
And we're going to find out right away because
Yes.
a rare move, we're seeing him already committed to Boston University. And when you talk about a great neutral zone defensive defenseman, who better to pair him with than Lane Hutson, who we discussed last year, raved about last year
So good
as a prospect, and he goes 62nd. I still cannot believe that he fell that far. This is Pilsy. We always talk about on Locked On Senators, the yin and yang. I don't think there's a better example of it in college hockey next year.
Yeah, honestly. And that's the thing. Like, that's a really good D pair because you're not going to rely on Lane Hutson to carry the puck up the ice every single time.
Well, that's the crazy part.
He can, but it's not like teams are going to be like, oh, dump it in Willander's zone because he's just a absolute liability with the puck, right? Like, they're not going to be avoiding Lane Hutson every time because if you keep bringing it over to Tom Willander, he's going to end up carrying the puck up the ice himself. So I think that's a really good skill that he has, and he's able to get shots through to the net, and I really feel that he projects as a safe two-way defender.
Craig Button, who a lot of his is through international tournaments and talking to scouts, he has him at 8 on his list, Pilsy. He has him at 8. He's the second defenseman behind Axel Sandin Pellikka, 8th on his list, whereas Corey Pronman has him 15th. Scott Wheeler has him 27th. Chris Peters has him 17th, and Elite Prospects 23. So there is a wide range. He's going to be a first rounder, though, and I think whichever team gets him, man, it's going to pay off. It might take a couple of years, but I would bet on the upside for Tom Willander.
Okay, so I'll ask you the same question I asked when we compared other defensemen.
Yep.
Would you take Tom Willander over either Axel Sandin Pellikka or David Reinbacher?
I would take him before Axel Sandin Pellikka. I would take David Reinbacher's my number one defenseman.
Interesting, because I really thought you liked Sandin Pellikka.
I do. I just think that the whole package of Reinbacher puts him at number one. Okay. And I think that it's just a more safe pick. So I think it depends what team to an extent. I don't think that they're miles off. They were a pair for parts of the world under 18.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And they looked really good together as well. So I would just kind of take, and maybe Jake Sanderson's immediate impact kind of skewed my thought process, but it feels like these great skating defensemen are having a lot easier of a time entering the league. And if he's as physical as Oscar's telling us he is, then he's my type of defenseman as well.
Yeah, nice. I would agree with you. Now, I'm not saying they're miles apart, but personally, I think Willander's skating skills gives him the edge.
And Scott Wheeler says he's strong in all 3 zones, two-way defenseman who's a confident and decisive game that uses his beautiful balanced skating to push forward or fall back on his heels and outlet the puck. Peters says while he did not showcase a particularly high-end offensive toolkit, tremendous skater, high-end defender. Willander can be physical and has a good defensive stick. And now we'll give you a bonus one. On the ice, he is probably one of the best skaters that I've ever played with. Good hands, good shot, and plays more physical than you think he will do. Thumbs up. That's from Oscar Pettersson, Ottawa Senators prospect and leading point per game scorer on Rogla's J20 team, where Tom Willander was the leading defenseman. So that's from a guy who was in a ton of goal celebrations with him this season. What did Pettersson have? What was it? 20 goals in 21 games at that level?
I know he had at least 20 goals. Yeah.
So nasty. All right. But any final thoughts that you have on Tom Willander?
Yeah, I like him. And I think we're going to see once Reinbacher is selected. I do believe he will be the first one selected. I'd be shocked if not. I think we're going to see maybe even a team trade up to get him because there's not a lot of high talent defensemen in this first round. And if a team is after that, you might have to pay a pretty penny to get it. So don't be surprised if we see that.
More Locked On Senators draft profiles on our YouTube channel. All right, Pillsy, just for you Sens fans out there, I didn't need it in the video that's going online. Oscar Pettersson, 23 goals in 24 games with Rogla J20.
Wow, Pistol Pete.
And can confirm he will be at Dev Camp this year. So we're starting to see a little bit of the roster take shape. We know that Igor Sokolov will not be there. We know that Stephen Halliday will be there. We know that Philip Nordberg will be.
Yes.
Same with Oscar Pettersson. It'll be Philip Nordberg's first time putting on the Sens logo. So unless he bought a hat overseas.
Which he might have.
We know it wasn't a shirt.
Yeah, that guy's not wearing a shirt.
No chance. But any final thoughts on today's show, Pillsy? Nice to see the Florida Panthers get in the win column in the Stanley Cup final. And cha-ching, your Brandon Montour goal hit in 4 minutes.
I'm obviously not going to do this, but can someone keep track during next regular season of all babies being born? If there is a baby being born by a player, I need to know because the baby bump is one of the most consistent things in all of sports, Ross, but especially hockey. So this is something that I'm going to be absolutely locked on to next season.
Do I look confused to you? Did you notice a shift in my expression?
A little confused, yeah.
You know Steve Warne, friend of the show, absolute beauty, writes for the Hockey News now, as well as his own podcast on the Ottawa Senators.
Okay.
Sources say that DeBrincat would like to stay in Ottawa, likes the coach a lot, and loves the team.
I don't know. I mean, who's this source? That's what we need to know, I guess. But
here's the direct quote. And again, go to thehockeynews.com and read the full article. Steve's one of the best guys. He actually he hyperlinked our Pierre Dorion interview in his story about us. It was like, go listen to it. Absolute great guy.
Good dude. Yep.
Class at Blue Team Elimination Watch is this guy's invention.
Classic.
I believe when he says sources, I believe it.
Yeah. Oh, no. I'm not discrediting the sources. All I'm saying is we've heard all the opposite.
The source says he would like to stay, but he knows this is one contract that needs to have term in it, like Cole Caulfield's. Go read the whole article. I'm just going to read these quotes. He likes the coach a lot and loves the team. I think he is worried that with all the guys making big money, he might not be in their plans, but was excited to play with a healthy Josh Norris. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think all this really boils down to, Ross, is that Alex DeBrincat wants a long-term deal. He's a young family in his early 20s, just had a kid, but he doesn't want to sign a long-term deal with a team that he just had a down year. You know what I mean?
It sounds like he wants to sign.
Yeah, but I don't think that's probably the best business decision. Like I think he likes the core, and I think the guys like him, and I think it works. But I don't know.
I don't know either, man. But if term's the problem, term shouldn't be the problem. If he wants 8 years and it's not like way more, like I would try on an 8-year term. I think I've said this before. 8.5 would be kind of what I'd be comfortable going with Alex DeBrincat. Anything higher than 8.5, I start to grit my teeth a little bit.
Yeah.
But as much as he had 27 goals, he only scored in 22 games. They won 19 of them, Pillsy, when he scored, right? We were reminded of that yesterday. But he also only had 3 more even strength goals than Julien Gauthier last year. So there was a down year. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But if he wants to stay, they should be able to figure something out.
The only thing, Ross, is if you lock yourself into an 8-year deal, $8.5 million, and you end up being a 40-goal scorer multiple times again, you're looking at, you're given a really team-friendly deal, especially playing in Canada with the taxes and everything, right? So, and this is his prime. Like he's locking in for his prime. So
things just got a whole lot more interesting, though.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone's recommended a bridge deal. I feel like that'd be smart.
Yeah, well, anyone who listens to this show would know exactly how you think, but there's merit in that. But there's also, I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting from this article is he wants an 8-year deal, right?
No,
Like,
I think he does. I just don't think I don't think he thinks that that's the best business decision to do the long-term deal in Ottawa.
this is like next week, Locked On Senators, and do we even have to tease it? The Alex DeBrincat story, we were working under the pretense that he did not want to sign a long-term deal in Ottawa.
Mhm.
That was the pretense we were working under. Now, a source says that he does want to sign a long-term deal here. And I'm curious if word got to Alex DeBrincat that he didn't like DJ Smith. And that's where he's kind of like, his side's like, can we like at least take our foot off DJ Smith's throat here? Like, I know all the players like him. Like, I don't think it's fair for DJ to be like, DeBrincat wants to go. It's DJ Smith's fault. Like, those are just people who hate DJ Smith and want any reason to blame him.
And Ross, you made a good point. Like, this is a coach with 1 year left on his deal and new ownership's coming in. Like, let's not pretend this is a brand new Mike Babcock that's signing a 7-year deal and it's a guy with a huge rap sheet and that is going to be here long term. Like, that is not the case. So
seems like DeBrincat would be happy if that was the case.
Yeah. So I don't buy that at all. Yeah.
But I did find that funny where it's like, 1 year, but he's not going to come. It's all good. Hey, this is super exciting news, and we'll kind of reevaluate over the weekend. We do have 2 draft profiles dropping Saturday at 10 a.m. and 2 draft profiles dropping Sunday at 10 a.m. Those will live forever on YouTube, and maybe we'll put them all together and make a bonus video or 2 to go into your audio feeds closer to the draft. But if you want to be the first to check out more draft profiles, head over to YouTube. So to recap, Steve Apostolopoulos has pulled $1 billion bid. Alex DeBrincat could be interested in coming back to the Ottawa Senators. Loves the team. All right, we'll leave it at that for this week. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.